Hello everyone and welcome back to Versus, that most beloved of competition shows where no one, not any one of the combatants, has ever actually showed up to defend themselves in studio. Thus I, your intrepid host Mark Ellis, get to be judge, jury, and Doc Ock for all the world to see. And today on the show, it's Heartthrob City.
Aw, thanks.
I mean, you already got me. And adding to this will be two Tinseltown teen titans.
Ouch.
They're not teenagers? Really? Well, you could have fooled me. They play young, and they began their fresh-faced acting careers at precocious young ages, so help me welcome Timothée Chalamet and Tom Holland to the show. Again, not literally. They will not show up, even if I invited them. Let's not get our hopes up.
I would rather be dead.
In one corner, we have Tom Holland, he of the itsy-bitsy franchise Spider-Man.
I'm not Spider-Man. I mean, what would make you think that I was Spider-Man?
Teensy-weensy video game flicks like Uncharted, and he even does big-time animated movies such as Onward. In the other corner, it's Timothée Chalamet, who sanded a formidable career in blockbusters like Dune, critically acclaimed coming-of-age tales like Call Me By Your Name, and he's such a talented guy, he was invited to a film called Little Women. They're both the next generation of uber-talented A-list movie stars capable of generating hundreds of millions of dollars in one movie and getting nominated for tiny gold prizes in the next. But today,
there can be only one.
Which, speaking of Highlander, if they ever reboot that franchise, I know two fellas who you might want to call. In the meantime, here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer/audience score. Round 3, season of giving. Round 4, s'mores. And then we'll do a wild card round that I really hope also involves food somehow. And if you thought Timothée Chalamet and Tom Holland were just lucky, struggling actors who booked big parts because they're incredibly dashing, then I want you to take one last look at your bubble, because it's gonna burst. They showed preternatural performing abilities at absurdly young ages, so their experience belies that youthful exterior.
Please turn away, I feel shy about my new muscles.
Tom Holland originally thought he'd be a dancer, and he's got years of onstage chops as Billy Elliot to prove it. Meanwhile, Chalamet attended a New York high school centered around music and the arts, and he's become something of a fashion icon these days.
All part of the plan.
So maybe this whole movie star thing is a side gig to these folks, but for us, here on Versus, it is those film careers that are going to take center stage. I'll save room for a Holland lip sync battle or a Timothy rap bars escapade to be the tiebreaker. All right, studio audience, what do we say around here?
Life seems super sad.
All right, we don't have a crowd. Let's get it on. On me! Round 1, box office. Yeah, all that talent comes in handy, I'm sure, but will the hard-working folks of Earth fork over their cash to see you on the big screen? You do know one of these fellows plays Spider-Man, right? Before we get to that lad who booked the role of Peter Parker, let's first take a look at Timothée Chalamet, who auditioned for the role of budding photographer Pete to see if he'll be any competition to the web-slinger.
Physically or metaphorically?
If we're counting outer space spice movies, then yes.
You know, sometimes I amaze even myself.
Relax, Han Solo. I'm talking about Dune, the Denis Villeneuve hit that stirred up just shy of $400 million worldwide. And that's not even Timothy's biggest hit that takes primarily in space.
I think you just can't bear to let a gorgeous guy like me out of your sight.
Who let the Star Wars people in this? I'm giving Tim some credit for his role as young Tom in the Christopher Nolan smash hit Interstellar. Nolan loves nothing more than when you see his movies on the biggest canvas in town, and that film rocketed off with $651 million in the bank. And when Chalamet has prominent roles on Earth, he does okay too. Little Women hauled in $218 million, and the critically adored 2017 double bill of Lady Bird and Call Me By Your Name teamed up for over $120 million. That's certainly good enough numbers to make most any competitor perspire, but how about Spider-Man? Well, he might not even need that alter ego to make a statement here in round 1. Here's some non-MCU hits that Tom Holland has been involved in. Like Timothée Chalamet, he was once upon a time young, and as one of the sons in The Impossible, he helped that film earn $169 million worldwide. Then he lent his voice to animated features like Spies in Disguise, which would gross $165 million bucks. And he also does live-action-ish voiceover work for projects like Doolittle, which somehow made $251 million worldwide. Really?
That's what it said on the news. And the news never lies.
There's no judgment here. I'm just, wow.
I didn't have any better ideas.
Holland also starred in Uncharted, based on the huge video game franchise, and that film pretty much ties Dune at just a few sand granules short of $400 million. All right, so we got us a ball game. Well, we had us a ball game. Allow me to put this into perspective. Timothée Chalamet, legend to me, has averaged $170 million per film thus far in his splendid, ever-expanding filmography. His total box office receipts thus far equals $1.5 billion, which is a lot of money. However, Spider-Man No Way Home took in $1.8 billion by itself. Far From Home added in another $1.1 billion to the fun, and Spidey Homecoming kicked things off with $878 million across the globe. That ain't even the half of it. We first met Pete and Spider-Boy in Captain America Civil War, which brought in over $1.1 billion. And since we all like that movie so much, why not include Spider-Man in those little Avenger movies? Infinity War crossed that $2 billion line, and Endgame almost made it to $3 billion, settling in at almost $2.8 billion before selling what I imagine is a lot of Blu-rays. All right, now it's all over but the shouting. So allow me to yell this. Tom Holland is... 26, 27, it's gross.
Thank you.
His films have already amassed over $11 billion total, making for a per-flick average of $796 million. Now, we should point out he doesn't get to keep all that money.
I assume we're 50-50, right?
But it's still a solid opening line when you're meeting new people.
I am the most famous person in the entire world. And I'm still broke.
Timothée Chalamet may have found a franchise of his own in Dune, but for now, it's the current film property champ, the MCU, and its golden spider, Gooseman. That's not right. Who's top dog? It's a lot of animals. Kind of like that Doolittle movie. $251 million, huh? What's that? Man. Tom Holland wins round one, going away, and is now up 1-0.
I'm trying to, as much as possible, not participate in our economy. I don't like money.
Round two, Tomatometer/audience score. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Chalamet played well in round one and still took it on the chin, mainly because beneath Tom Holland's boyish exterior lies a box office mad titan that would make Thanos cringe in fear.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe.
But now we've arrived at the round that isn't about how rich you are, it's if those buck-churning talking pictures are actually any good. And yeah, them MCU flicks are pretty well received. But don't forget, Doolittle also counts.
We are finished.
And for the record, I might lean just as heavily into young Willy Wonka jokes if that movie had already come out at the time of this battle. Doolittle is at 15% on the Tomatometer, so the critics were not having it.
Well, I mean, when you put it like that.
But Chalamet's low point isn't much higher. Love the Coopers from 2015 is at 18%.
What have you done lately, oh great artiste?
And with that, we've gotten the worst out of the way. Onward and upward to... Well, Onward, that movie, Onward, Tom Holland and Chris Pratt are brothers in this animated adventure, and it's a fresh 88% on the TM. That's good, but only if you wanted the 7th highest rated Tom Holland flick on this metric. He's got 6 films in the 90s. Endgame snaps its way to the lead dog at 94%, followed by No Way Home at 93%, Homecoming at 92%, and both Far From Home and Civil War at 90%. The other film at 91% is Locke, which... I mean, come on. That's the movie with Tom Hardy driving a car for 90 minutes. That's the whole movie. It's a riveting acting piece, but I guess Tommy is a voice on the phone at one point, so sure. Have at it, kid.
Cool.
Timothée Chalamet has 4 films at 90% or better, making the overall high mark for either competitor, with Lady Bird at 99%. Little Women's at 95%, Call Me By Your Name is at 94%, and Miss Stevens is at 91%. So we're getting competitive here. Dune's at 83% for Timothée. Holland has The Impossible at 81%. So overall, it's a tight ball game, as Tom has a 68% Tomatometer film average to Chalamet's 66% average, which means we head over to the audience score side of the veggie patch, and it appears my jokes thus far have made quite a few of you angry.
Someone's been a bad boy.
Doolittle is fresh at 76%. Point taken, I stand down. Though I still prefer Rex Harrison or Eddie Murphy.
Sounds thoughtful of somebody. Really, people are awfully nice.
Tom Holland's all-time high with the audience is an MCU film and a Spider-Man flick. No Way Home, with all of its many arachnid men, is at 98%. Onward and Far From Home are tied at 95%, and even, as Mark Wahlberg says, Uncharted climbed to 90% here, finding the high ground against its Tomatometer score, which is Anakin Skywalker at 40%. Audiences weren't quite as high on Lady Bird as the critics were, although the film is still safely fresh here at 79%. However, Dune did climb up to meet the audience score at 90%, and Little Women held strong with a 92% on this measurement. Beautiful Boy also rose from a Tomatometer of 67% to reach the audience with 77%, but remember that precipitous increase that Tom Holland had with Onward? Timothée Chalamet also pulls that magic trick here, but with the Best Picture nominee. Don't Look Up is rotten on the Tomatometer with 55%, but the folks at home dug it to the tune of 78% fresh. All told, Timothée Chalamet is fresh with audiences, as he can brag about a 71% average per movie. Can Tom Holland beat that? Yes, he can. His average is 76%, and that's more thanks to his own Spider-Man adventures than those big Avenger team-ups. That's more than enough to press me. And no, I'm not just siding with the guy who's made $11 billion with movies because maybe he can help me out with a car payment or two. Tom Holland has now earned his second point fair and square by winning round 2, and he's suddenly up on fellow celebrated thespian Timothée Chalamet 2-0.
How dare you defy me?
Round 3, Season of Giving. And here's where Timothée Chalamet has his best opportunity yet to notch that elusive first point.
Remedy this failure.
In fact, winning a round on the hit show Versus might be the only thing he hasn't yet done, and lucky for him, the Season of Giving round refers to all those award show voting bodies whose job it is to dole out prizes for playing pretend. This round will be taken by who has the more decorated mantle. Although I'm sure these two have more than one mantle on which to adorn statues, ribbons, slime, because the Nickelodeon Awards are prestigious. MTV Awards can count as well, and I'm even going to toss in some magazines. Tom Holland won the GQ Superhero of the Year title in 2021, and let's be honest, both of these fellas at some point will be People Magazine's sexiest Blake Shelton of the Year before it's all said and done.
Hey, you. Put on some muscle?
I did?
No.
But enough preamble, let's get to that most celebrated event of the season, the Super Bowl of movies, the Academy Awards.
Let's get weird.
Boom.
Tom Holland has yet to be nominated for an Oscar, but he's won 3 Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Film Awards, and anytime an Academy recognizes you for doing anything other than serving detention, it's a good day.
The only way to really be cool is to follow the rules.
But Timothée Chalamet has been to the dance as a contender when he was nominated for Best Actor for his turn in Call Me By Your Name. He would also go on to earn a nomination from the Golden Globes for that portrayal, and then the next year for his role in Beautiful Boy.
Gotta see this one through. This is kind of working out for me right now.
But where Chalamet really has the edge is the sheer amount of tuxedos he's had to rent, not to accept awards himself, but just to enjoy the films he starred in receive acclaim from the front row. He's been in 5 Best Picture nominees already in his young career. Can you name them all? While I buy you some time, it's interesting to note that Tom Holland has already starred in 5 films that have grossed over $1 billion. Would that factoid have been better served in the box office round? Probably.
Don't ever apologize for being the smartest one in the room.
But then you wouldn't have had time to come up with the following 5 Timothée Chalamet flicks that have been nominated for Oscar's top honor. Are you ready? Dune, Don't Look Up, Little Women, Call Me By Your Name, and Lady Bird. You want to know how many won? Spider Egg.
I like how ruthless you are.
None yet. But the bottom line is, if Timothée Chalamet is in your picture, you got a fighting chance.
It's supposed to be a surprise.
That's not to shortchange Tom Holland and his ability, though. He's chosen a different route thus far in his career, and it served him okay. Plus, he's won a BAFTA award and an MTV Movie Award for his performance in No Way Home. Sadly, he didn't win MTV's most coveted award, the Best Kiss, with Zendaya that year. Those two lost out to, of course, Poopies and the Snake from Jackass Forever. Have we done a Versus on Jackass? That's gotta happen sooner rather than later, right?
Wow! He's talking smack.
The same could be said for either Holland or Chalamet taking home some gold. For now, it's Chalamet, whose 40 award wins total ranks higher than Holland's 24 victories, and thus, Timothée wins his first round of the day. Now we got us a ball game. It's 2-1, Spider-Man over Paul.
This is special.
The Atreides from the kid from Dune.
Sitting right here, come on.
Round 4, s'mores. That lovely food where you take the graham and the mallow and the chocolate was a sugary-coated disguise for this round that will be won not by who makes the most delicious confection on the range, but by who has shown the most range in their ever-growing acting career. Luckily for Tom Holland, this round will not be won by who makes the best s'mores, because Chalamet is going to turn into frickin' Willy Wonka at some point in the near future. Playing that role will require a ton of range. But before we prognosticate which roles these folks could knock out of the park on some distant day, let's look back on what they've already accomplished in their young careers.
Just again treating me like a kid all the time.
Warning to everyone over the age of 8 watching this vid, it's gonna hurt. You know, I want to root for actors of all ages, but not when they're 10, right? But that was pretty much the case for Tom Holland when he was cast in the heart-wrenching The Impossible alongside adult acting heavyweights. That came out wrong. Actors who had reached full maturity, we'll say, Ewan McGregor and Naomi Watts. It's not a role you ease into because it involves saving Santa Claus. That's some real emotion that every performer on screen has to convey, and Tom Holland was a legitimate discovery. Timothée Chalamet also showed talent and wisdom beyond his years in Interstellar, albeit in a role that saw him on screen for, let me check my notes here, 4 seconds. He also provides a deft audio touch with voiceover while Matthew McConaughey is thinking back on his life, and you can hear the emotional bandwidth emerging from Chalamet. Then we saw him in Miss Stevens in a role where he'd expertly maneuver those wanton emotions that all teenagers have. Rebellion and angst, countered by laughter and longing, all tossed into one giant Vitamix.
It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
A part that required a similar summoning of every experience leading up to that point for Holland was Cherry. Tom would later say that he had to go to some of the darkest places he'd ever been emotionally, physically, and he has no desire to go back, ever. So don't hold your breath for a sequel on that one. As far as Spider-Man goes, remember that week where we might not get a deal done between 2 giant studios to keep Tom Holland in the MCU as Spider-Man? It was a weird time, scary for a lot of fans, but at least the stuff got worked out and we've been rewarded with more adventures as Peter and Spidey grow up before our very eyes. Since Civil War, we've seen the dual role progress from a kid happy to just be there to someone who finally found their father figure in Iron Man.
That's not a hug, I'm just grabbing the door for you. We're not there yet.
To having to say goodbye to that daddy,
I just really miss him.
only to think he'd found another one in Mysterio.
It's really nice to have somebody to talk to about superhero stuff, you know?
But at the end of the day, we now know that the only people you can truly trust are those who dress identical to you from a different universe.
Peter!
Yeah?
Oh, and he might be single again because of the wizard guy with the spells. I'm struggling to keep up with all the multiverse stuff, but I'm enjoying the ride. It's not every day you get to watch a superhero worry about the last stages of puberty, college entrance exams.
I am so far beyond high school right now.
Death, bullies, all of it.
This is not what it looks like.
And speaking of longing for someone to look up to, what I appreciated about Uncharted is that it could have just been Tom Holland playing a version of Peter Parker, but he's got a different charisma about him here. His New York City bartender may look like he needs to card himself on a nightly basis, but when he matches wits with Mark Wahlberg's Sully, he's not looking for a mentor so much as an ally. It's not the toughest part Holland will ever play, except for that whole maintaining a rock-hard six-pack thing, but we do see shades of a different type of hero that he's been playing. But there's a reason why so many films featuring Timothée Chalamet have been nominated for Oscars. That kid has chops for days. In Call Me By Your Name, he pulls off one of the toughest things a person can do, or an actor can convey, coming to grips with one's own sexuality and being able to take ownership despite the fear and anxiety that can come from it. Juxtapose that with his turn as the bro-y boyfriend in Lady Bird, where he could have just been a one-note bad influence. Instead, Chalamet lends a real humanity to a 2D character, and that third dimension shows us that he's the embodiment of the freedom that Lady Bird craves beyond her small-town limits. In Beautiful Boy, he heartbreakingly grapples with addiction. Little Women sees him handle rejection, like that hillside scene where he can barely hide his pain.
Why are you saying this?
And in Dune, he's got the fate of the universe in his hands.
That's true.
So Paul Atreides might actually be able to match wits with Peter Parker just in terms of handling that chosen one pressure.
Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. Stark said you wouldn't get that because it's not a Star Wars reference.
It might be more of a career path win than anything else, and Stan Lee knows that Tom Holland enjoyed the spoils of his IMDb with that box office round, but while he was racking up the bucks, Timothée Chalamet took advantage of hitting plum rolls out of the park and turning easily throwaway characters into real people that we can't take our eyes away from. Both gentlemen are going to have a whole lot more to say as these s'mores get toastier with each passing award season, but for right now, the range round goes to Wonka. Which again, I don't think I need that movie, but like a delicious chocolate bar, I may not be able to resist. Timothy now has tied the match. It's 2-2.
That's hella tight.
And now it's time for the wild card round, iconic moments. Yep, it's the moments that made these two actors superstars that will determine the winner of this stage and thus the match, and it's more of a fair fight than at first it may appear. For every high-flying daredevil tactic pulled off by Spider-Man, there's that other guy who's making us cry, feel, emote.
It is the space between you. Fight not for yourselves. Fight for that space. Fill that space. Make it tissue. Make it mass. Make it impenetrable. Make it yours. Make it England.
But I've also gotten misty-eyed at comic book movies as well, including a couple of moments that involved a snap. Uh-oh, I'm not feeling so good. I'm kidding, you can't get rid of your host that easily. I'm like a taller, sexier cockroach with less legs and a bigger thorax. Do I have a thorax?
That's wrong. That's wrong.
We'll research it. Well, before I regale you with Spider-Man's greatest hits, may I remind you how Paul Atreides is able to kick some serious ass in Dune? I know he's barely fitting into his adult britches when we meet him.
That's rude.
But when push comes to shove, he punches back, as does Nathan Drake in Uncharted. I don't care who you are, you're gonna pay attention to a sweet, plain free-fall battle. Point Break, a few of them fast and mad car movies, but Uncharted really threw us right into the free-fall from the word go. And I know from experience, I wasn't aware I was sitting in a 4DX theater until that opening sequence. It's better than a cup of joe in the morning.
I think the poets might disagree.
Speaking of planes and airports, it's memory lane o'clock, Captain America, Civil War.
Wow, it's so weird how you run into people at the airport. Don't you think that's weird?
Definitely weird.
Sure, we were pumped to see Cap and Tony go mano a mano, and for Black Panther to make a sterling debut, but wow did Spider-Man showing up elevate that tarmac scrimmage to another level. The kid from Brooklyn met the arachnid from Queens, and Peter proved that he wasn't just about boyish enthusiasm, he could hang, literally, with the best heroes in the world, and he also taught us that it pays off to study really old movies.
You ever seen that really old movie? Empire Strikes Back?
Did you have to say really old movie?
Jesus, Tony, how old is this guy?
I don't know. I didn't carbon date him. He's on the young side.
Couldn't he just have said, hey, remember in Empire Strikes Back? We all would have gotten it just the same and felt better about our own ages moving on. Spider-Man Homecoming reinforced the fact that Tom Holland can play on the same court with superheroes, but can he handle the pressure of a school dance? It's always a nerve-wracking experience, beating your crush's rents. Try having her daddy also be your new arch nemesis.
All the reasons I didn't want my daughter to date.
What a game of mental chess that car ride to the Fish Under the Sea event was, and I love how we can vacillate between the innocence of a kid trying to do too much, like the boat sequence, versus a man stepping up when he has to, such as when he cranks up AC/DC to save the day in Far From Home.
Oh, I love Led Zeppelin!
The heartbreaking part of the father-son relationship for Timothée Chalamet in Beautiful Boy is that he has a loving dad played by Steve Carell, but too often the lure of the dark side of human nature supersedes that bond, and a great or awful display of tug-of-war is the diner scene. If you just want to cry for both of these folks for different reasons, have at it. I did the same thing.
I want it to go like this.
And with characters like Elio from Call Me By Your Name, or even Laurie from Little Women, Chalamet can show off his dance moves in a variety of ways. And the fireplace sequence near the end of Call Me proves the next level chops of Timothée Chalamet. Good actors can convince us that they're feeling emotions. Great ones make us feel them too. But sometimes we'll get a moment that captures all the emotion we want and acts as a pivotal moment in the world's biggest blockbuster, as when Peter has to say goodbye to Mr. Stark. It was so heartbreaking when Parker wasn't feeling well at the end of Infinity War, but now the roles are reversed. Tony did what he had to do, and Peter must now accept that he's on his own, albeit with a suit that will definitely conjure some of the fresh memories that cocky genius built into it. If we're tied as of the moment, it's hard to not lean towards No Way Home, not because it was fun seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield join the reigning Spider-Man, but because Tom Holland was able to hold his own against two fellow actors who know a thing or two about delivering a line in the clutch.
You know, it's what we do.
We'll have many more memorable moments from both Timothée Chalamet and Tom Holland, hopefully for decades to come, but as of now, it's Holland who wins out. He gets the wild card round point and thus wins the match. And my co-host of the Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong podcast, Jacqueline Coley, may never forgive me for giving Tom the win over her beloved Timothy, so maybe we can have her two beaux, Timothy and Bill Hader, duke it out in a future versus? Time will tell. But in the meantime, thanks to both these guys, not just for being good sports, but for all the great performances they blessed us with over the years. And again, they're still both in their 20s, right? They're born in the mid-90s? You two may be on the top of the world, but you'll never know the joy of chewing Cinnaburst while chugging a Crystal Pepsi. I'll tell you about it someday. And of course, this is all just my opinion. Now it's your turn, dear viewer. Hit me up on social media at Mark Ellis Live and give me your thoughts on this epic matchup featuring stars of the next generation. And keep it right here at Rotten Tomatoes for all the latest in the world of movies, TV, and everything in between. Thanks for watching Versus. I'm Mark Ellis. It's not, oh yeah, you need the thing. All right, see you later.